What's up, guys? My name's Brandon, and welcome back to Apple Weekly. In this episode, we're going to be discussing even more new features and changes in iOS 27. We're going to talk about why Apple is suing OpenAI and their response. We have new details on the iPhone 18 Pro Max and the iPhone Ultra. Apple's Hide My Email might not be as safe as you think, and much more. Okay, so let's start by talking about iOS 27 Beta 3, the current latest version of iOS 27. And there are even more new features and changes found in the update, but there's also a lot to talk about with performance and battery life, which we'll talk about near the end of this video, because this is going to be what the public beta is built off of. And again, we'll talk about that a little bit later. But the first thing I want to talk about with 27 Beta 3 is the fact that the clear icons look so much better now. Like, I've actually reverted back to using them full time now on my device. I know it's controversial, some people don't like them, but now they look way better than they ever did before here in 27 Beta 3. Now also the indexing, so if you guys know, when you update to iOS 27 Beta 3, the indexing that shows up right there now shows the percentage complete. And so a lot of people saw the percentage and it actually went away after just one day for me. Like, it took less than 24 hours and my indexing was done. So it's a lot faster than what we saw on the previous two betas. Now, we also saw some people like Max Wine back here say that you could actually access third-party applications via Siri. Like, if you ask what your battery percentage is on your Tesla, it will tell you. Now, I personally have a Tesla, fully up to date. I'm on 27 Beta 3, indexing is fully done, and I tried this several times over several different days, and it was never able to work for me. So your mileage may vary on this, it may work, it may not, but that appears to be a new change here in Beta 3 as well, which can be very handy. And of course, it's not just for Teslas. You could use this for other things as well, like accessing different information in different third-party applications. It doesn't have to be just the battery on your Tesla, for example. Now, speaking of Siri and Apple Intelligence, I do also want to point out that in the Home application, if you want access to the Home features, the new features in iOS 27, if you go down here to the Apple Intelligence section where you see Apple Intelligence in Home, this actually requires the iCloud 2 terabyte plan. So if you have the 2 terabyte plan or above, you will get access, but it is limited to those plans. So that's pretty interesting. It's our first time we've really seen certain features be kind of gate kept behind a certain level of iCloud plan. Now, there's also a change for the AirPods. So if you go into your AirPods right here and you go to the adaptive listening mode, you can see that you can now tweak this to be more towards noise cancellation or more towards transparency. So you can actually set it now. Before, it was just stuck in the middle. It would be adaptive and it would make up its mind, on its own. But now you can prefer to have more ANC or more transparency mode, which is really nice to have a little bit more control over that. There was also a new AirPods Beta update that came out this week, so the build on that is 9A5314B. So make sure you check your AirPods to see if they are up to date, if you do have AirPods Beta updates enabled. And if you're not sure how to do that, all you have to do is go into your settings for your AirPods right here, go all the way down to the bottom, and you will see AirPods Beta updates. Make sure that is enabled. We also have a change inside of our accessibility settings. So if we go into our settings, accessibility, and then scroll down, you can see that we have live recognition. So a new toggle here for live recognition, or not just a toggle, a whole new section for live recognition. You can see the default question and the preferred inputs, all of that right there. Now, one of the most annoying bugs that was in iOS 27 Beta 1 and in Beta 2 has finally been resolved here with Beta 3. This was probably just as annoying as the crop bug. Maybe not as annoying as that, but it was like up there. And that was that when you get a message from an unknown sender and you tap into it, it would just be completely blank. You would not be able to see anything of that message. I would force quit, I would reboot, nothing. I was never able to read those unknown senders' messages, but now that's been fixed in Beta 3, and as you can see, I can actually read that full unknown sender message. Now, of course, one of the biggest changes in iOS 27 Beta 3 is actually underneath of the Siri settings, and if you go into voice, it's the ability to set the pace and the expressivity for your Siri voice on your iPhone. So this is something that was there, the setting was there in Beta 1 and Beta 2, but it was not active until here in Beta 3, and I have to say, it's made a big difference. I didn't really expect much. Like, when I showed the demos in my What's New video, I was like, okay, this is cool. But actually using it day to day now and actually hearing the voice sped up specifically, like, I love having the pace all the way up because Siri always talked too slow for me. I love that. And also it's more expressive. I like having it personally. That was super loud, but I usually like having it like right here, right below the full for expressivity, but I like the pace to be all the way up. But I just like that we now have the flexibility for it, because I know some people, like my parents, for example, or maybe some older people, might like the pace to be a little bit slower. So be able to keep up with what Siri is saying. So it's nice to have those options there. Now, just as a reminder, because I have had some people flag this in the comments, this is only available for the iPhone 17 Pro series. So this of course requires the 12 gigs of RAM, which obviously only the Pro models have, and that's going to be the case for the 18 Pros as well. So if you get the base model 18, you're not going to be able to have this feature or the new dictation feature. So just keep that in mind if you are trying to decide between those. If this is something that's a big deal to you, that is worth keeping in mind. And then of course we have to mention the biggest like weird feature, I guess, in iOS 27 Beta 3, and that is something that we don't know yet if it's a bug or a feature, or honestly it might be both. So I've gone back and forth this entire week trying to figure out if this is a bug, a feature, and I think my final conclusion is that it's both. So let me explain. So the feature is if you put something on your lock screen like this, so you can see there's a clear subject here. If you have, a clear subject on your lock screen here, now in Beta 3, if you swipe down slowly, you can see the subject just appearing. So I know it looks funny when it's just me there. There's gonna be some memes about that on Discord, but you can see the subject kind of just comes down over top of the applications. Like if I went into like X, for example, if I go into X right here, and you can see my whole timeline right there. If I start scrolling down, I just appear on my timeline on X. It's kind of funny, but it's actually kind of cool as well. And the reason I think this might be a bug, but also a feature, is that I think it just pops up really weird. I think it's just not very fluid. It doesn't really look as fluid as I would like from Apple. It's a little bit choppy and not great, but I think it could be a feature because it's actually really cool and it actually works pretty well, and it works in every application. It's not like a hit or miss. It only works sometimes. It performs like it's actually a feature. So I really hope it is. What do you guys think about this though? Do you think it's a cool feature? Do you not care? Let me know your thoughts. There's also a nice new change that somebody on Reddit found, and that is that if you now delete an application with a subscription, it will show you an opportunity to cancel, like a window to cancel 2 separate times. So Apple's getting better about canceling subscriptions if you're maybe gonna forget about it and get charged, unknowingly. Also, 5G Plus is now available in India on supported carriers. I should also mention that in the wallet application, I mentioned in my What's New video that the Insights feature is missing, and that is true. It actually is missing for those in the US. However, it is still there for those in the EU. So I've seen some people in the EU and also in the UK point out that they still have the Insights feature, but it appears that those in North America do not have this. Now, if you go into notifications, you can see we do actually have spending insights right there, but that is not the same. If we go here, obviously if you watch my Beta 2 video, you would know what the Insights feature looks like. It seems like Apple is just kind of pulling that back to fix it, and it will come back in a later beta. I do also want to talk about the experience with Siri AI on the Apple Watch, because as you know, watchOS 27 Beta 3 was the first beta to get Siri, the new Siri, on the Apple Watch. And it's been great. It's been kind of hit or miss, I have to say. Like, it's been great overall. I love having it there, and I like that it's like right in the center, when I launch my little app launcher here, but it's not been great at doing basic tasks. Like when I tell it to set a timer, or when I ask it to control my home kit devices, it's really slow and it's kind of hit or miss with that. So it is a bit buggy still. I still think to this day, like watchOS is the buggiest of all the 27 OSs, but it is getting there, and I'm glad that we actually have it now. And I just have to say that iOS 27 Beta 3 has really impressed me a lot. Like I said that for Beta 1, I said that for Beta 2, and I'm just waiting for something to mess up. Like I'm just waiting for the software to be like, okay, here's what we are waiting on. Like now it's downhill. It's happened every single year since every year I've ever covered betas. But for some reason, 27 is different. iOS 27 is just a different animal. It is so stable for a beta. Like it's still a beta, don't get me wrong. Like you shouldn't install it on your main device unless you're willing to take that risk. But it's tremendous. Like it's been an excellent experience. Even here on Beta 3, it's somehow gotten even better. And we'll talk more about that later on in the video with the performance and the battery life and all that. But I just wanted to point that out, that it has been tremendous. And I don't know if it's just me, you guys let me know in the comments, but I'm very impressed so far. So before we talk more about iOS 27, let's talk about some of the latest news from this week. And we have to start with the big news that Apple is starting to test Chinese memory chips. So last week we got the big news that Apple was in discussions with CXMT about sourcing Chinese memory to help with the shortage and with pricing. And now we have a new report from the Financial Times that claims Apple has already begun testing DRAM memory chips from CXMT, the Chinese state-backed chip maker, who is the world's 4th largest DRAM producer, only behind Samsung, SK, and Micron. So Apple is currently running CXMT's chips through technical validation, which is the process that usually happens right before a supplier gets approved for production. Now keep in mind, this is only for phones phones sold in China for now. So Apple is lobbying to get Washington's blessing to use CXMT more broadly, including for US-based phones, but it could be an issue of national security. So basically what's going on here is Apple is trying to put this Chinese memory inside of the China-sold iPhones to help free up some of that demand and free up some of that supply for, so we can have more of that memory for the US market and other places as well. So I don't expect this Chinese memory to go into US sold iPhones. It could happen, but I think it's a pretty slim chance at this point. But it seems like this is all about getting that Chinese memory in those Chinese sold iPhones. And there's a lot more to come with this, so stay tuned. And something else that there's a lot more to come with is the fact that now Apple is suing OpenAI, and some of these allegations are pretty insane. And what makes this even crazier is that if you remember, just last week, OpenAI was suing Apple over the botched, ChatGPT integration and how Apple Intelligence wasn't as popular as they thought, so they weren't getting their, end of the deal, all that stuff. That was last week, but now this week we're hearing much more egregious claims, I guess, against OpenAI from Apple this time. So Apple has filed a lawsuit against OpenAI, accusing them of trade secret theft. Apple is accusing them of engaging in a coordinated campaign to steal information about upcoming products. Apple said in a suit Friday that OpenAI encouraged Apple employees to share information, components, drawings, and other materials related to upcoming products, part of the efforts by OpenAI to develop its own suite of devices. As part of the litigation, Apple named Tang Tan, the chief hardware officer at OpenAI, who was previously Apple's VP of product design, along with former iPhone hardware engineer Chang Liu. And here's where it gets crazy, because we have some details. If you take a look at the lawsuit here, these are allegations against Mr. Tan. So it says this in the actual suit. It says he has directed job candidates still working for Apple to bring actual parts from Apple to their interviews for show and tell sessions in which he and his team at OpenAI can elicit still more Apple confidential information. These directions to bring Apple's parts to OpenAI job interviews surprised at least one of the candidates, who commented that he, quote, didn't even know we could take those from the office. So that is crazy. I don't think I've ever heard of that. I mean, show and tell using Apple's actual products and obviously their trade secrets as well is insane. But it gets even worse, because listen to this about Mr. Liu. And remember, these are all allegations at this point. This is just what's Apple put in the lawsuit. So this is all just alleged. So it says, after leaving Apple, Mr. Liu failed to return an Apple-issued work laptop that he had previously authenticated to Apple's network. In a message left on a former colleague's Apple-issued work laptop, he said, I still have another computer on which he planned to access Apple information. While employed by OpenAI, he accessed and used his former colleague's Apple-issued work computer and also exploited a rare, previously unknown authentication bug to access Apple's shared network folders. He then celebrated his improper access, exclaiming in a message left on his colleague's Apple-issued work laptop, LOL, and that it was so funny. Then over several weeks, while developing hardware for OpenAI, Mr. Liu accessed dozens of Apple's confidential hardware-related files. Messages left on an Apple-issued work laptop revealed that Mr. Liu also coached his former Apple colleague, whom he was recruiting to join OpenAI, on ways to, quote, avoid trouble with the security team when copying confidential Apple files. Now that is wild, and that is absolutely something worthy of a lawsuit, and you better believe he will be fired ASAP if any of that is true, because that is just egregious. Now, OpenAI did actually respond to this very quickly, like pretty much within like an hour, within the hour of this news breaking. They said this: we have no interest in other companies' trade secrets. We remain focused on building innovative technology that empowers people everywhere. So a super vague comment, of course, but the fact that they did respond to this right away just really tells you the brevity of this case. So don't expect this to be ending anytime soon. However, my take is that this isn't actually a lawsuit like against OpenAI as a company. It's not going to be some massive $100 billion, trillion dollar, lawsuit. I think this is more just geared towards those people that OpenAI employed who were doing all these malicious things behind the scenes. So what do you think about this? It's pretty insane, and especially if you read the whole thing, it just gets even more insane. So I will leave that link down below if you want to read the full lawsuits. Now let's talk about the iPhone Ultra, and can you believe we're just 2 months away from seeing the new iPhones? Time flies. So we will be seeing the iPhone Ultra and the iPhone 18 Pros in just a couple of months, and now we have news that the iPhone Ultra could be a repeat of the iPhone 10 from 2017, meaning that we're going to see it announced at the same time as the iPhone 18 Pros, but it's going to release later on in the year. And we're also hearing that the resale price for these iPhone Ultras might actually get pretty crazy because they're going to be potentially very hard to get at first. So this comes from Ming-Chi Kuo. So he says this: the foldable iPhone is likely to repeat what happened with the iPhone 10 in 2017. It may be announced alongside the other new models, but with pre-orders and official sales both coming later. Based on discussions with carriers, sales channels, and resellers/proxy buyers, commonly referred to as scalpers, my conclusion is that the demand for the foldable iPhone should remain strong at least through the end of 2026, even at a price of roughly $2,300 to $2,500. This means the foldable iPhone could sell out immediately after pre-orders open, with delivery lead times quickly stretching to 4 to 6 weeks or longer and remaining there through December. Scarce initial supply, a highly recognizable design, and an innovative user experience should all support a short-term resale premium. Resale prices 50 to 100% above the official price would not be out of the question. So Ming-Chi Kuo is predicting that we might see the iPhone Ultra sell for double the price, as much as double the price, like 100% of the price. So if it's $2,500, some may sell for $5,000 if the supply is so small. So that's insane. We haven't really seen that at all, I guess, since the iPhone 10 was really the first time, at least I can recall, the iPhone selling for more than retail consistently. But if we're going to see double the price, that would be insane. I don't really see that happening personally. I think it will sell for more. I don't know about $5,000 though, but what do you guys think about that? Now, we did also hear from multiple Chinese outlets actually this week that the iPhone Ultra has officially entered mass production. So that is great news because now we are not expecting any more delays now that mass production has started. So I think that completely rules out a 2027 release now. So I do think for sure at this point, we are going to see the iPhone Ultra in 2026, which is great news. Well, let's talk about the iPhone 18 Pro Max, because that might be a thick boy, at least from the news that we're hearing now. So Ice Universe over on X said this: if I told you that the iPhone 18 Pro Max's 5500 milliamp hour battery comes at the cost of a 240 gram body weight and a thickness close to 9 millimeters, would you still accept it? So basically he's saying that we are going to see a nearly 9 millimeter iPhone 18 Pro Max, which is thicker than the 17 Pro Max. So the 17 Pro Max had a 8.75 millimeter thick body and it weighed 233 grams. So it will be thicker, and of course it will weigh a little bit more if this is accurate. And by the way, speaking of that battery capacity, we did also see this week that the battery capacities have been revealed for the new iPhone. So it looks like the iPhone 18 Pro is going to have a 4288 milliamp hour battery in the US, which the iPhone 17 Pro had a 4252, so it will be a small increase of 36 milliamp hours. And then for the iPhone 18 Pro Max, it's going to have a 5567 milliamp hour battery versus 5088 on the 17 Pro Max. So that's a big jump of nearly 500 milliamp hours. So the iPhone 18 Pro Max might have the best battery life ever. I mean, every year that's the case, but it might actually be a pretty solid upgrade even over the 17 Pro Max, which was a battery beast. So that'll be interesting to see and kind of follow. Now, also we heard bad news about the AirPods with the cameras. I don't really know if that's bad news because a lot of you guys were not a big fan of this whole concept, but we actually heard recently that the AirPods Pro with cameras have been scrapped. So Kasutami on X referenced a previous post about his and the next AirPods case being concluded, and now he said suspended, implying that the product has been suspended at least for now. And this is kind of interesting because we just heard Mark Gurman just a couple of months ago saying that these are actually getting close to like production, like mass production is actually starting soon on these, and he hasn't said anything since this post came out, like denying it or anything. So it's kind of a weird spot right now. So if we're waiting on the AirPods Pro with the cameras in them, of course it's more like sensors for Siri and things like that. But if you're waiting on those, you might have to wait a little bit longer because those appear to be, at least for now, suspended in terms of production. Now, speaking of Mark Gurman, we also got a new report from him saying that in the spring of next year, we're going to see a new iPad Pro and a new entry-level MacBook Pro. So he said this: Apple is preparing an upgraded iPad Pro line and a redesigned entry-level MacBook Pro for next year. They're testing 4 new iPad Pro models planned to arrive in spring of 2027. The new models will keep the current 11-inch and 13-inch display sizes. The updates will largely focus on internal improvements, including faster chips. Apple has previously tested a vapor chamber cooling system for the tablets to improve sustained performance and reduce overheating. Apple is also preparing a revamped entry-level MacBook Pro, codenamed K104, for as early as the first half of next year. The 14-inch laptop will adopt a new design in line with what Apple is preparing for higher-end MacBooks with touchscreens due between the end of this year and early next year. So that's interesting. We're going to have the new design on the M7 MacBook Pro. And you might be thinking, wait, M7? We don't even have M6 yet. And that's because M6 MacBook Pro is still coming this year. So we are going to see the M6 MacBook Pro within, the next few months here in 2026. And we're going to speed fast to get to the M7 early next year, at least in the first half of next year. We'll have that M7 with the redesigns. If you're winning about, if you're kind of contemplating about if you should get the new MacBook Pro now, honestly, I would wait. I would not get the M6. I would just wait for the M7 since it's actually so close. Like you're probably gonna have to wait like less than a year to get that, and it's gonna have a new design. So if I were you, just based on these rumors alone, I know I don't usually say to buy based on rumors, but if you're kind of on the fence and you can sit with your laptop for a little bit, I'd just wait for the M7. Now let's talk about Apple's Hide My Email, because we just got a new report of a really interesting vulnerability that was exposed by 404 Media. So they said this: a security researcher has discovered a flaw in Apple's Hide My Email feature that can expose your real email address even though it's supposed to stay private. The researcher says that they reported it to Apple over a year ago, but the issue still has not been fully fixed. In their limited testing, every Hide My Email address that they tried was vulnerable, potentially allowing attackers to uncover users' real email addresses and link them to personal information through public databases. Apple says it's investigating and plans to address the bug in a future security update. Now, 404 Media was withholding the technical specifics of the vulnerability because it remains exploitable for now. So yeah, if you're using the Hide My Email feature for nefarious reasons, or if you're doing it for something sketch, you might want to be aware that there is a vulnerability out there that could uncover your real data. Now, if you happen to have an Apple Vision Pro and you're in the market for a brand new Lamborghini, you are in luck, my friend, because we just got a new Lamborghini application for the Apple Vision Pro, an official Lamborghini application. And this actually is pretty cool. Like, all jokes aside, this thing is actually pretty sick because you can now see inside and outside of full-size Lamborghinis that they sell. So you can place it in your garage. You can go into the immersive environment within the app to see all the details. You can even see like how the aerodynamics work. You can see the bodywork and kind of pull back and see the bodywork underneath of the panels. The sound and spatial audio sounds amazing, and more. It's actually really cool. So even if you're not, obviously I was kind of joking, really joking, but if you're not in the market for a Lamborghini, if you're just a fan of cars and you have a Vision Pro, check it out. It's actually worth the download. Now, we are 2 months away from Apple's big September event, but we are going to have 2 other pretty big tech events in the next couple of months as well, including one just in a couple of weeks. So we have Samsung and we have Google, both who are unveiling new foldables, which might be pretty similar to what we're going to see from Apple. So we are going to see the big Samsung event on July 22nd, and we're rumored to see the Z Fold 8, Z Fold 8 Ultra with the new passport style dimensions, the Z Flip 8, and new watches. And then the Google Pixel 11 event is slated for August 12th, and we're going to see the new Pixel 11, Pixel 11 Pro and Pro XL, and the Pixel 11 Pro Fold. So again, we're going to see 2 different folding devices from these companies, and the one we're really going to be looking out for is the Samsung, the Z Fold 8 Ultra. That's going to be one that has the very similar dimensions, or basically the exact same dimensions as the iPhone Ultra. So it's going to be really interesting to see how those turn out, and it's kind of always a preview of what we're going to see from Apple. But of course, Apple always spices it up a bit. But just know those are coming up, and stay tuned for those. Now, moving back over to the iPhone, I want to talk about a couple of big app updates that we saw this week, starting off with Flighty. So if you are a frequent traveler, Flighty is like my favorite application ever for traveling. So we have some new features that are actually really big features. So first off, we have connection confidence. And this is cool because it's going to show you every step of the way from when you land to getting to your connecting flight, like as far as how long it's going to take on the tram, how long it's going to take for like different things like that. So it's pretty cool. It will show that. And then we also have, it shows your airport guide. It shows you how long it is to walk, passport control, all that. And then also gate predictions is a big one. We have typical connection time, but gate predictions is a big one. So if I go into one of my flights here, and if I go into this one right here, for example, you can see that it shows we have A3 through A9 redesign as my expected terminal. And this is super helpful because sometimes you'll be in limbo. You don't really know which direction to go in an airport, but if you have a prediction here, it can help you dictate like which direction you're going to walk. I actually just had this happen to me last week where I had to go potentially to a whole different terminal if I didn't know exactly which, gate I was going to be at. So that is a great new feature there. If we scroll down a little bit, you will see for the connection. If I go into the connection here, you can see it shows I have 3 steps and it shows right there how long it will take. And it shows typically it's going to take 20 to 35 minutes. And I have 59 minutes there, at that airport. So I will make it, with some time to spare, which is great to see. So really amazing feature here in Flighty. Big fan of Flighty. As you can see, I have done quite a few. I've done 36 flights this year. So it's really helpful to have that, when you are traveling, especially these new features. Now, also, if you are into run clubs, if you're into running and things like that, you probably have the Strava application. And if you go into the group section now, we have a brand new events tab where you can see some of the upcoming events near you. So you have local run club events, you have races, all of that right here in its own dedicated section, which is really helpful. If you tap on it, if you go into it, you can register, you can train, you can see, how many people are racing in this. You have all these details right here, which is really nice to have here inside of Strava. But let's talk more about iOS 27 here, because I do also want to talk about the performance on iOS 27 Beta 3, because it has been tremendous. So I had a lot of, a lot of good things to say about iOS 27 and Beta 1 and Beta 2. But like I said earlier, that's kind of tapered off. It usually tapers off a little bit by Beta 2 or Beta 3 in previous versions, but not with iOS 27. This just keeps getting better every single time. I actually have not had a single random respring or random reboots at all here in Beta 3 this week, whereas every other version I did have like 1 or 2. Like it wasn't anything major, but I did have some issues. I had some crashing and things like that, but nothing here in Beta 3. And it kind of makes sense because the public beta will be built off of this, but I've just been extremely impressed here with the performance overall. Also the Wi-Fi issues. A lot of people had Wi-Fi issues, myself included, in Beta 1 and 2. That seems to be completely fixed for me in Beta 3. My Wi-Fi never disappears anymore from up here. And of course, you will see a new feature here in Beta 3 as well, where we have the 5G and the Wi-Fi at the same time if you pull down the control center. So performance overall, really no complaints whatsoever. But you guys let me know in a comment down below. Is this just me, or is performance really this good for you as well? And then in terms of battery life, this is also something I just never say about a beta, but I feel like the battery now is as good as it is on iOS 26. And you guys know I never say that. It's like I almost never say that. But battery life, I have to say, for me, has been pretty much on par now with iOS 26. It wasn't there in Beta 1, wasn't there in Beta 2, but now with Beta 3, pretty much on par with what I remember, at least, with iOS 26 when I'm using my main device here, my 17 Pro, and really it's the same on the 17 Pro Max as well. So battery life has been tremendous, and I think a lot of that is also attributed to the fact that I'm not having random crashes, random resprings. My device isn't heating up as much as it used to on betas 1 and 2. Indexing is shorter. Like all these things kind of just, just stack on top of each other, and it leads to just overall much better battery life and performance. So all really nothing bad to say, in my opinion, here with Beta 3. And this is great news because we are going to see the public beta next week. So we should be seeing the iOS 27 public beta, the very first public beta, on the week of July 13th. So we could see it on the 13th itself, maybe the 14th. We should see that for sure in the first half of next week. And that's going to be a big deal. I think a lot of people are going to go ahead and take the jump and get on iOS 27, which, I usually recommend people to wait for that if they have, just one device and they really have a lot of important business things on that. I usually recommend to just wait for the public beta. So I think a lot of people will jump on board, and I'm really, happy to say that you're probably going to be pretty impressed because performance and battery life are really solid, like maybe even as good as iOS 26. I don't want to make that claim, but for me, in my experience, it has been, which is great. So even with the public beta though, keep in mind, you are going to have issues, you are going to have bugs, you are going to have things that go wrong, like you are going to have things like that. And actually, I just want to point out one bug. I forgot to mention this, but if you copy something and you go to paste it right here inside of messages or really anywhere, you might see some really weird characters right there where it says write with Siri. That is a bug that you can fix with just a reboot, because I had that when I first installed it and it did go away after a reboot. So you can see now it works. It shows paste for messages. It is a little bit wonky. It is a little bit buggy there, but it does work after a reboot. But yeah, overall battery life performance, tremendous, still a beta, but keep that in mind. Now, I do also want to talk about iOS 27 Beta 4. So this is going to come after the public beta. Now, keep in mind, we will likely see a re-release of iOS 27 Beta 3 just to align the build numbers. So if you are on developer beta, you'll most likely get another iOS 27 beta 3 update next week to have an updated build number with the public beta that's going to come out if you're on the public beta profile. So keep that in mind. And then the following week, on the week of July 20th, that's when we should see iOS 27 beta 4 and we should see public beta 2. So both of those should come out at some point next week, most likely not on the same day. It will be at least 24 hours apart usually, but we should see that fourth beta right there on July 20th. And of course, the final release will be down here at some point around mid-September. But anyways, guys, there you have it. That is everything new in the world of Apple this week. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you enjoyed the OG intro coming back. And shout out to this guy who left a comment on last week's Apple Weekly. And he is the one who mentioned that I should, have the original intro come back. And a lot of you guys were on board with it and said yes. So it's back now. Let me know if you want me to keep it around. I just love doing whatever you guys, say you like best. And I know it's an iconic intro. So I appreciate you for leaving that comment and making me realize I should go back to that. But anyways, hope you guys enjoyed this episode of Apple Weekly overall. If you did, let me know with your thoughts down there in the comments below, and I'll see you very soon.